economic conditions which will allow decentralized growth, which is there for the Aam Aadmi. Therefore, we will still fall back into a bureaucracy or a decision making or a credit institution, etc., which is not ready for that kind of a thing, and we can't build it overnight. Therefore, why Timbuktu is important or something else is important is we now have to go to the next level of building those institutions. And the last question I have is, where are the people in all these things? It's all like if I say NAPM, if I see Azadi Bachao Andolan, it is all we middle class people who are there talking among ourselves. Where are the people who are finally the arbiters of something that can go from the grassroots, can be a movement? So how does Vikalp Sangam get the people to be part of this process? Because unless it becomes widespread, when we talk scale and things like that, right? So these are the things that are thinking.
You see, Gandhi does provide clues in the dark here. Of all our leaders in the last 100 years, nobody else, as far as I know, has really said that all that the rich need to do is to get off the backs of the poor. Nobody has said it except Gandhi. The amount of faith that he placed in the intelligence of ordinary people was enormous.
Tolstoy.
I mean, I'm saying in India, among our leaders, can you think of another leader? Not even JP says that, right? Certainly not Nehru. But among our political leaders, nobody other than Gandhi really put that forward. And when he talked about 700,000 village republics, he knew what he was talking about. He wasn't pipe dreaming. I came across a book which a friend of mine who teaches at Azim Premji University sent it to me some time back, the PDF of the book. It's published in 1915. It's written by a British administrator called Matthias, I think his name is. And it's called Village Governance in India. You know, it's 250 pages of documentation of governance systems in so many different parts of the country. I haven't gone through the whole of it, but what he tells you is pretty remarkable stuff. Now, if you have this progressive outlook and you believe that things are always getting better in history and industrial revolution is one step towards a higher stage of evolution and so on, you are never going to look back and learn anything from it. You are never going to believe that anything good was destroyed in the past. You will always believe only bad things have been destroyed, good things have survived.
No, it will get destroyed and then we start doing it.
But the point is that what Gandhi was sure about, and this is the instinct of the man because he didn't have the time to do the research on it, but he was right about it from instinct, was that there have been things in existence in this part of the world, whether they are governance systems or water systems or methods of cultivation or health systems, etc., which have sustained our people for centuries, against which there is this tiresome discourse of Amartya Sen and people like that saying people were dying at the age of 23 and 40 and so on, as if that's not happening today also, and so on. The point is that once you allow for the fact that there are things from the past to be revived and built upon, that those were disrupted traditions. This is my view of the Indian past, that we live in a derailed culture. Okay. All cultures of the modern world, I believe, are derailed. Some are more derailed than others. Some have pushed the others off the rails. Others have been pushed off the rails by the momentum of their own force, the West, in other words. So we live in a derailed culture, so many traditions have been disrupted. We actually do not know who we are as a people. We have lost sight of that. So first job of our generation and below is to recover sight of who we are as a people. What is our peculiar truth? What is our role in history in our part of the world before we think about others and what we have to give to them? Let's think about who we are. Yeah. Now, this is where I find the whole contribution that Gandhi made through his actions and his writings, as well as what Tagore wrote, and said in so many places, so valuable. It is a completely non-Eurocentric, non-Indo-centric, for that matter, perspective. It's a universal perspective. One of the few universal thinkers of the modern world. Okay. And we have not built on it. because there was a rejection. There was a rejection of all things of the past. And Marxists and others constantly saying, oh, Gandhi wanted to take us back 500 years and 700 years and take us to pre-industrial age. Well, now 100 years later, we have all the ecological evidence to show who is right and who is wrong. And clearly Marx is the one who's on the wrong side. So one has to first face that fact of how lazy we've been as thinking people. And there is also a huge critique of power. You talked about power in institutions. Gandhi actually didn't think in terms of building institutions. This is again part of the language of modernity. Gandhi had, if you have faith in the people, then our job as people in the middle who have some sense of the injustices of the world and who are concerned about doing something, our job is to simply facilitate the self-activity that people are capable of. And then they will take it wherever they want to, okay, within limits of course. And the point is, what is the peculiar creative genius of the people that has to be evoked? So for instance, Uzramma's work, which basically involves revival of a certain tradition of textile production and innovating on a basis which is pre-colonial, but taking it ahead. Still leaving economic power as much as possible and power over technological choices as much as possible in the hands of people. That is the way to think about many other areas, whether it's health or education and water, so many things. And not think about them in segmented, fragmented ways as has become the habit with us today. And the way the internet prompts us to think. There are 20 topics, they're all separate from each other, they don't hang together. I mean, for instance, just to give you an example, I'd gone to a place called Polvan, which is a village in the lower reaches of the Narmada Valley. It's a twice displaced village. What's that dam in that part of Gujarat called? I forget the name of the dam, it will come to me. For that dam, they were displaced, and then when it got silted up, 40 years later, they were displaced again. So I went and spoke all these things there. This 7 years back I'm talking about. And some 2,000 people in the village, all of them were present to listen to what we had to say. At the end of it, an old lady comes to me and she says, I'm going to put it in English, she says, what you're saying is that these people want to get us out of the village and move to the cities and move into a palace which stands on our shoulders. Simple elemental wisdom, in the form of a metaphor, but that is exactly what Manmohan Singh was trying to say to people at that time. That's how this woman's wisdom interpreted it. The dangers are very obvious to me, which is that, people have done this kind of work up to a point and then used people to promote their own power, trying to build the kind of institutions which would, in principle, try to represent people. And there's huge problems. I don't believe in it. I don't believe in representative democracy. I'm not even sure I believe in democracy at this point of time. I do believe in Swaraj, and I do think of Swaraj in a completely different way from the way I think of democracy. Swaraj as an idea is much older than democracy. It comes from our culture. It was first conceived in Indian vernaculars, not in some European language. Clearly it has roots here which we need to dig out and build afresh from. Gandhi was not making pies in the sky. Gandhi was talking very real stuff based on what he had seen traveling around India. Gokhale had forbidden him from speaking in public till he had travelled in India for at least 1 year. He went around the whole country, and whatever he could glean from his experiences, he tried to put forward. So, a lot of the questions which you are raising, Walter, I would actually question the foundations from which those questions are being raised. Because are villages going to think in terms of building institutions? Let's go and ask them. I don't know the answer. Maybe they will. And then the question is, what kind of institutions do they need? For instance, it would be worth asking Ilango at a Vikalp Sangam, what do you think are the kind of institutions that are needed in Tamil Nadu to promote and defend the kind of experiment that Kutumbakam represents. I mean, for instance, one sort of idea I have, is it worth fighting for a proposal to central government policymakers which says, let's redefine all our 800 crafts listed by the government of India as industry and entitle them to all the advantages that industries are entitled to, all the subsidies and so on. Instead of seeing them as artifacts of the past, which we must museumize and so on, let's look at them as possible creative avenues of livelihood and other generation. You know, is that a good thing to fight for or not? You know, one should ask people like Ilango, and then build a whole vision around it. Do the calculations, employ young economists to do the calculations as to how many jobs livelihoods can be sustained with, you know, say textile production in this village. I mean, a country which has had a long tradition of rural industry, what happened? Are we still going to keep surrendering to some Manchester? I mean, why? Why should we? You know? So let's be more nationalistic for a change than the nationalists. You know? There are thousands of disrupted traditions of knowledge and practice which have to be recognized first. We don't have a sense of recognition of them. So we don't know what is possible. I mean, I would confess to great ignorance in the area. I do know people, some people who know a lot about it and who have done a lot of thinking along these lines. I mean, that's why I'm reading Sahasrabudhe, for instance, because I think he has spent his whole life thinking about the whole question of Lokvidya and what its place should be in a good world. The problem with bringing in developed systems or developed institutions from other contexts into...
But this is where you're misreading what I'm saying, because this is not what I'm saying.
I'm not saying you are saying this.
Okay,
go on.
No.
No, you finish.
Because when I use the word institution, I didn't mean bringing institutions from outside or bringing institutions from the top. But what I was saying is that what happens is that if you are saying that, for example, we have to talk to, for example, the military industrial complex, who's going to talk to them? And what kind of institutions will develop from the grassroots work that is being done, not necessarily only by NGOs, but by people. Elango is not an NGO by any chance. Now, how do these people who have developed and got such a great thing going, what form of aggregation is there which enables them to talk and have a credibility with the military industrial complex, if that is the way to go?
But then you have misunderstood something which I was saying.
Okay.
So, you see, each one of us is a certain person located in a particular context already. We've already lived so many years in a particular way and so on. The question is, what am I to do? The question is, what are we to do?
Yeah.
And the question is, what are people to do?
Yeah.
You know? And there are three distinct questions.
Absolutely.
So, when I say develop a discourse on war and ecology, that's not something which I'll expect the people to do. That's not something I will expect them in any foreseeable future for them to be even able to do, given their, lack of opportunities, education, privilege, etc. But you and I are in a position to do that. And one should do that. And to the extent that intellectuals have any role in any social change, I would say that this should be part of the brief. But it has not been done. And one has to ask, why not? That question needs to be asked. Why have a whole set of important questions not been tackled by our intellectual class over the last 70 years? And that question bothers me immensely, not just because I am in that situation, but because actually, in absolute terms, not thousands, but tens of thousands of Indians have been in that situation. And obviously these questions must have occurred to many people, and yet we have not progressed in the direction of building a discourse, for instance, on war and ecology. For instance, building on what Ashish Nandi writes in Intimate Enemy about our psychological condition and our relationship to power. Building on, for instance, the Gandhi-Tagore dialogue building on their view of technology. Where are these discourses? They should be freely available today. They should be read by students in schools and colleges. They should be discussed. But we haven't even reached the point where Hind Swaraj is compulsory reading in school or college. I read Hind Swaraj in my 30s. This is a ridiculous state of affairs. How did we get to this point? You know, nobody ever gave me a book of Tagore to read. And Tagore was the best ecological thinker I know in India in the last 100 years. City and Village, Robbery of the Soil is the best piece written I know. How come I was denied this? You were denied this. So clearly there is an element of voluntary colonialism or mental, slavery, whatever it is, that has kept us deflected as an intellectual class from a whole set of key issues. And those need to be identified, what the issues are, what the priorities should be in terms of what we should focus our thinking and reading and discussing about. This is one set of things. The other is about people themselves and what they are capable of. And there my questions are many. For instance, I would like to know for each part of the country, or rather we should like to know, because I am incapable of knowing all of it, we should like to know what are the traditions of medicine, what are the traditions of education, what are the traditions of governance which have existed in different parts of the country. For instance, Khasi family law works in a completely different way from how family law would be in Rajasthan. Okay? But can Khasi family law actually be built upon, both for their area and be proposed in other areas? Why don't we learn from each other within the subcontinent when there is so much to learn?
We've been having this dialogue with Murugesh over the years, over the last weeks. And we have been seeing Murugesh talking about his caste and how they govern themselves. Actually, he's been talking about that. And even today, how much power they have. Actually, there is not been too much study into those systems of governance. And they are all village people, and they are governing a large group of people.
Sure.
But no real attempt has been made to understand that. Because again, I'll go back to, when you talk about these MBAs and others that we will import and we will use them because there is a lot of progress in governance. I'm not so sure that's very good. Because most of this is very Eurocentric, and the understanding of governance comes from a completely different paradigm. Whether that is good or not, I don't know. What it brings along with it, I don't know. And so I'm a little, I'm a little worried now, because we've been trying to get all these young people to come in. They don't understand the local at all, and they will also trash what is there. The problem of not learning medicine, local medicine, the way local healing is done, is because constantly it has been trashed.
Yes.
It has been trashed by people like us. Just as much we trash local ideas of God, local ideas of spirituality as superstition. It still happens. We keep doing it. I have done it in my own way. So I wonder if getting the same thought process which has ruled us for so long, which has not allowed us to study how our people used to govern themselves, what they did, how they did, etc., to bring in there and then expect them to set up grassroots organizations that are people governed. I don't know. I mean, it's a question.
I don't think John meant that outside people will come and the issues of governance will be there. I don't think I heard him saying that.
No, he didn't say that. What I think Bablu is pointing to is the risk, the very real risk, the very real and likely risk of actually importing a whole set of things through an innocent move in that direction. That is what I think.
It's not intended. It's not intended that way. I know, see, 37 years I worked. I know with what kind of mindset I came in.
Yeah.
And how I saw the change happening within me. And it did not happen because I read. It happened because I observed what was happening.
Correct.
And slowly that has come. But I have not gotten rid of it all. I have not fully understood how people are doing it because I still have my Eurocentric way of looking at things. And I have not. Truly I have not. But I know that somewhere the way I used to think earlier and the way I think now has changed. And what I used to trash earlier, I no longer trash. I try to see into that. What is it? And I feel that lot more has to be done. Lot more work has to be done in that. If we truly want to understand and respect, because you see, over all these years, with all this 200-300 years of domination, culturally, being bastardized, all the stuff that has happened, people in the villages have still retained quite a few of their things. They are not like Murugeshan's, this caste has retained it. The Gaundars have retained it in Tamil Nadu. They have somehow caught hold of it and it is there. In whatever form, it is still struggling to hold on to it. How can we manage to try and understand that and give it a legitimacy and allow that to begin to voice itself? That's a challenge. I mean, I don't know how far and how good or whatever, but I also think that that's a huge challenge in front of us.
I mean, look at it
but
this way.
This comes with what I heard John and Walter saying. The voicing doesn't happen because it's a very local phenomena. With a very, the scale is very small, and all solutions one is thinking of is something that will, what you call, work at a large scale. Whereas, and they can't find legitimacy because it doesn't have a translation because the multiplicity of this has to also be taken into account, and it's a very local phenomenon. I mean, it's only with the, like for example, Murugesha's or even my community's way of handling the panchayat is a very, very local phenomenon.
But when you see Mendaleka is a governance, of the local.
Actually, Mama wanted to go.
As far as I know, I don't know the whole story, but I know people like Mohan Bhai Hiralal is an outsider. Okay, but he's one person. In that whole thing, how many outsiders have been involved in creating that consciousness and then the governance that has come out of it? These are their ideas. Are they really their ideas? I don't know, because I have not really gone there. But from what all has been written, what is being said, because I heard a 2-hour long thing in TDH, they presented, this guy came and spoke about the history of the whole thing. From whatever I have understood is that all this, how to govern themselves and that thing, is something that has come from within. It's not come from outside. Now if it has, that means that in some pocket, in some part of the country, in some small little place, people still know how to govern themselves. That somehow somebody, and maybe I think Mohan Bhai has had a hand in this, I don't know, because he has, from going in from inside, working there for 30 years, he has done something to bring it out, maybe, or give it the legitimacy, maybe, I don't know. But if it is possible there, it should be possible elsewhere, that there must be that sense of governance, that sense of what the larger system is all about. Wisdom must be there, yeah.
The lesson there is that you immersed yourself in this community, maybe in another avatar earlier and maybe another avatar now, but you've been there 37 years. You immersed yourself in that community. He has immersed himself for that so many decades over there. And he has built links with other people in the cities. So therefore that organic link which is necessarily there between the rural and the urban is there. It also requires that we immerse ourselves over there. And how many of us are willing to immerse, because this cross-cultural and this cross thing of ideas, culture, even technology and whatever else it is, or ideas of democracy, or whatever it is. What they say, the proof of the pudding is in the pie. And therefore, that's just something that has come in Mendalekar. Therefore, the same thing I can say of what you've done in the cooperatives and the whole. I mean, you must be one of the few people, I'm talking about the women's group, who have not taken money from outside. Whereas everybody else was just forced, or whatever it is, directed to take money from outside. It has a totally different dimension altogether. So there is a contribution. But there is also, therefore, how do you have that immersion maybe is something that we need to look at as the way in which we will bridge this divide which has happened completely between the rural and the urban. And we are not able to get across to the young people that an immersion is required. And they want immersion at the rate of whatever it is we are talking about.
Yeah.
You can't do it like that here.
No, but just like what Bablu was saying, one needs to look at oneself and where one has moved within one's own life in terms of changing quite significantly our perspective. One also needs to look at today's young people. I'm relating it to last night's discussion. And if one is to be of any use to these young people in terms of some sort of guidance, then I think it's very important to understand the complexity of influences which are working on them all the time. And we have actually not done that enough. And unless one does that, one doesn't have a clear assessment of their condition. And so therefore one is not in a position to advise them either.
Absolutely.
But I want to say one more thing, which is that my friend Ram Subramaniam works in Tamil Nadu. I don't know whether you met him. So Ram has actually done significant amount of work studying the Jati Panchayats working within Chennai city. Now that is the kind of work which first needs to be done. There are Jati Panchayats working in the basti across the street from me in Vasant Kunj. I only have vague glimpses of it. But there are functioning systems. They may be just, unjust, gender, unjust, I don't know. I have a lot of questions about it. What I do know is that where the buck is involved, people don't make mistakes nowadays. You look at the drug and pharma companies which are globally agile, and who do they go to when they are looking for herbs? They don't go to MS Swaminathan or Amartya Sen. They'll go to the most elderly tribal ladies in Arunachal and Nilgiris. So clearly they have a better instinct for truth than we do. Because this kind of a book, a white woman has written it. How come we have not written it?
Get your stuff.
She must have said that.
Correct. But enough of our people have actually immersed themselves there. But this kind of work has not been done. Now you might say Ladakh is local. It's just one place on the map. But for people living there, it's their world. It's the whole thing. There are outside influences which they need to understand and digest, and that's part of the reason that this Sangam is happening in Leh. But it's very important that the local not be understood just as the local, because it is also people's entire world there. And subjectively, I think Gandhi had that perspective of empathy which allowed him to see that the moment people start perceiving that life is elsewhere, all is lost. Life has to be here and now. It has to be very concrete, it has to be accessible, it has to be very real here. The moment, which is what so much of modernity has done, is everybody's got restless because you're thinking action is happening somewhere else. The mainstream is always somewhere else. And that has a very corrosive effect on cultural confidence. And why people want to move from the small village to the small town to the big city to Paris to Singapore to London is exactly that. Because they feel they have nothing. And it might be, it is, I think, completely a self-misperception on the part of our ordinary people here. I'm not just talking about intellectuals, no, I'm talking about ordinary people. So it's that kind of cultural confidence that needs to be revived first before you can even take stock of the knowledge that is available with them in their life. And in oral traditions, you have to respect, a different kind of knowledge.